so that future student athletes can know that they don't have to just go to a big name school to get an opportunity or an NIL deal or something like that. Because the pros isn't guaranteed, but something that you can control is your influence and your brand.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Connect Over Coffee. Today, I'll be connecting with Antoine Burrell, who's the founder of BE Collective Plus. Antoine, welcome back to the show.
Happy to be here. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty well today. How about yourself?
I'm doing pretty good. Pretty good.
Yeah, I got to get some greenery in my background just to make it a little bit more festive, I guess. That's one thing I got to add to the office here. So I like the plant.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it adds to the vibes, man. You gotta have you some plants around.
Exactly. I gotta do that. It's upstairs. I have them upstairs, but just not in here yet. So something to put on the list to do. All right. So Antoine, I know the last time you chatted with the group here, we played a little game called Foul or No Foul. So today I decided to switch it up a little bit for you. Instead, we're going to do something called a 2-minute drill. And essentially what that is, I'm going to rapid fire a few questions at you, Antoine, and then you just answer back to me with the first thing that comes to your mind. You ready?
Okay. Yeah.
All right, let's go. Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Samsung or Apple?
Apple.
Apple. I'm like 0 for 10 on this one for that question. Everyone says Apple. Business professional or business casual?
Business casual.
Checks or stripes? Sneaker wise, what are you rocking with, checks or stripes? Nike or Adidas?
Ooh, checks.
Checks. Okay. Favorite sports team?
Eagles.
Good. There we go. Favorite sports movie?
The Sandlot.
Nice one. That's a good one. There we go. Favorite athlete?
Derrick Rose.
One song that gets you hyped every time you hear it?
Public Service Announcement by Jay-Z.
Okay. Candidly, funny story. We had a call earlier today. PSA Jay-Z came up. Public Service Announcement was their song go-to song too. So that's pretty ironic there. It's pretty funny. Besides your phone, your keys, and your wallet, what is one thing you cannot leave the house without?
My glasses.
Makes sense. Good answer there. Good answer. All right. Let's connect a little bit further here. BE Collective Plus. Talk to me a little bit more about the platform and why this is important for you that you went and created it.
Yeah, definitely. So BE Collective Plus is a HBCU name, image, and likeness marketing agency. So we operate as an NIL collective, which is here to provide student athletes with branding opportunities. My background is in corporate partnerships, having done it at both the collegiate and professional level, working directly with brands. So this felt like a natural fit for me to kind of step into as I was looking for what my next move and next step was going to be. And as a graduate of an HBCU, I compared what I saw in my professional experience to what I saw in my undergrad experience, being within athletics and interning in the athletic department, and just seeing the difference as far as just resources and things like that. How our athletic department was compared to some of the bigger Power 5 schools that I was working at later on in life were. And so I see NIL as a great opportunity, kind of like a great equalizer, if you will, as we look to kind of bridge the gap and level the playing field again for HBCU student athletes and HBCU athletics, simply because NIL is beyond just looking at the size of your school and where you play. It's looking at the individual student athletes who are attending your school and looking at their personal followings. And these are students that are coming, from all over the country, all over the world in some cases. And so if they have large followings back home, they're bringing that to school and creating larger followings at school, and really creating a brand and a platform that gets overlooked simply because they're not at a larger school, but they're still having the same comparable influencer numbers and data as student athletes at larger Power 5 schools. So I believe they should get similar opportunities as far as working with the brands because they can provide the same value. And in turn, I think that grows the exposure for HBCUs and grows the exposure for their student athletes to ultimately make them more competitive in the long run, so that future student athletes can know that they don't have to just go to a big name school to get an opportunity or an NIL deal or something like that. Because the pros isn't guaranteed, but something that you can control is your influence and your brand.
Yeah, no, I like the word you use, an equalizer for student athletes there. I think that that was a really key important word that I took out of that, right? Because a lot of schools, like you said, there's your big five schools, you know, your Alabamas, those schools there, especially talking about football there. But the equalizer where it's the individual student athlete that can really monetize on their NIL there just as strongly as a player at an Alabama or one of your other big five schools there. So I love the word equalizer there. So that was really cool. Let's jump into the name BE Collective Plus. I feel like there's always a story behind the name when you make an organization. You know, there's a story by why the Connect is called the Connect. But I would love to know where you came up with BE Collective Plus and if there's a story behind that name there.
Yeah. So it is the story. So I outside of the collective, I have my own personal digital marketing agency that I do freelance work. Um, and so that's really just like I said, capitalizing on my professional background, working with brands and whatnot. And so once I started looking into NIL and looking into collectives and understanding like what the NIL landscape looked like, I saw an opportunity that I could bridge the gap, but without merging my two businesses together, so that I can maintain my freelance projects under my digital marketing agency. But I wanted to create a space to where I could use that same skill set very specifically for student athletes and NIL, in which the collective was the opportunity to create a separate entity specifically for using this skill set with corporate partnerships and working with sponsors and brands for the student athletes and ultimately, the universities that we're hoping to work with.
Okay, cool, cool. So just out of curiosity, does the B and the E stand for something in particular?
Oh, Burrell Enterprise.
Oh, that's very simple, right?
Yeah,
That makes a lot. Like when you hear like, oh, that makes sense. Of course, that's
yeah.
what it stands for. All right. So now talking a little bit more about NIL in general. Seems like it's a very popular phrase these last couple of years. A lot of brands, big and small, are investing in that student athlete to help grow their brand. Because I mean, like you just mentioned, the followings that they have on social media is really powerful. Um, Essentially, can you walk us through and explain a little bit what NIL deals are and how collegiate athletes are able to monetize off their name, image, and likeness? Because I know from some other standpoints, people think NIL is this and that's what it is, or NIL is this and that's exactly what it is. But someone in this space, can you just explain a little bit more of what that deal could look like from a partnership perspective?
Yeah, definitely. So think when you think NIL, the simple way to look at it is think influencer marketing meets sports.
Hmm.
Um, so kind of look at it from that same lens is when you look at influencers and you look at their social following, their engagement numbers, and you look at that's how they're able to have brand partnership deals. We see it often with celebrities, but now we see it with the social media influencers. And now that same trickle effect has come down to the student athletes. And so what NIL is, it's an opportunity to form marketing partnerships with brands from a student athlete's perspective. So a student athlete can utilize their voice and their platform as a student athlete at their respective campus and within their social atmosphere, whether it's on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok now. Their presence that they have online, it creates a social capital that is valuable to brands that are looking to target to the demographics that these student athletes represent. And so what it is, it's a marketing partnership for the student athlete and the brands, and they're able to say like, hey, we would love for you to post about, our new product. Or in some cases, there are opportunities where, hey, we'd love for you to be a host on or a guest on our podcast. Or there are opportunities where we, want to be able to help you, get lunch or something throughout the week. So, if you come here and promote our business, then we'll give you gift cards or something like that. Like there are just a lot of different opportunities that are like I said, true partnership opportunities between the brands and the student athletes, where it's not always the cash deals. It's not always, we'll pay you $1,500 to post on Instagram. Sometimes it's trade deals where it's something that's just more beneficial to you. It could be the local, pizza shop down the street from campus, by you posting about them on social media, like we always see, the DC foodies or the new spots on Instagram. Imagine a student athlete doing that about their local pizza shop around campus. And in exchange, that pizza shop is giving them, gift cards to where they can come eat. And it's not coming out of, necessarily the pizza shop's marketing dollars, but it's still providing something to the student athlete for promoting that business. And the student athlete is there now able to go eat essentially for free. Can utilize those gift cards to go eat or take a friend to lunch or whatever. And that's the opportunities that NIL presents, from a very small scale all the way up to what we see in the news and the media, seeing kids in commercials and, seeing the big name deals with the large brands like AT&Ts and whatnot.
Yeah, when you said eat for free, it just went back to my college days as a student athlete. I was like, oh man, Varsities was the place. Shout out to Varsities, Lawrenceville, New Jersey. There, that was the go-to spot for all athletes out on Rider University. That's where we went. I was just thinking, I was like, I could have benefited from some
Yeah,
gift cards if this was legal back when I was playing, which makes it seem like so long ago. But if it was legal to do that back when I was in college playing, that we would have taken advantage of that wholeheartedly. So
oh yeah, definitely.
yeah. And then, I think, what's pretty cool is, like, correct me if I'm wrong, the other deals that are really cool is you're seeing the jersey deals that are coming through, which doesn't require a lot of lift on players, which I think really is cool to see, because every player can be involved in a jersey deal. You can have your jersey deal from your starting five, talking basketball, to the last person on your bench. Someone's probably going to buy the hometown kids, even if they don't play a lot, that last person on that bench there. So I think that's what's really cool about this space there, where you don't have to be the star player to have your product out there and marketable, and hopes that family members will support you and your local friends will support you and buy that jersey or buy or support that product that you're endorsing there.
Oh yeah, most definitely.
Yeah. And then, really just to kind of follow up on that previous question there, why does BE Collective focus solely on HBCU student athletes?
Very specifically because I'm a product of an HBCU. I went to Hampton, the real HU. Shameless plug there. But no, I compare my life experience. So when I was a student, I wasn't a student athlete, but I was an intern in the athletic department over different years while I was a student there. And so I know what I saw, like interning within our marketing department, and how we did a lot of work, which gave me a lot of hands-on experience, which is amazing, which prepared me for my career and where I ultimately went. And then as I grew professionally and I got opportunities where I was at larger schools like a Maryland and then even like a Georgetown, saw the discrepancy in resources from what we had at Hampton to what I saw at those two different schools comparatively. Where you had larger staffs, you had more people being able to help, more hands on deck, more interns, to where game days were a well-oiled machine. And just kind of things like that, which all add to the overall game day experience for the student athlete, the fans, the people working, all of that. And so when that overall experience is enhanced, that's how you build a fan base, and that's how you build people having that loyalty and an investment into your program. And so I think, that's not a change that can happen overnight. For HBCUs to just say like, hey, everybody, let's band together and love athletics all of a sudden. But I think it's something that like you have to start somewhere, and you have to like kind of take that first step in order to build something like that into existence. And so I've always felt that desire to give back to HBCU athletics in a way, whether, at one point early in my career, I thought it would be like sponsorship, and I'd be God's gift to sponsorship and sell all the sponsors. But now I'm pursuing a new path where I think the opportunity for me to expand and reach a greater masses is through NIL and through this collective, because I can lean in on my sponsorship experience to really create an opportunity to level the playing field, like I said, for HBCUs. And so that's why we want to start there. We're willing to help any student athlete that reaches out, but our mission is to support HBCU student athletes, because those are the ones when we talk about, the difference between equality and equity,
Mhm.
those kind of things. So like this is how we start to build true equity, is reaching out to where is under resourced in the beginning, as opposed to let's figure it all out, get it ironed out, clean cut, and then be like, oh yeah, let's go back and help the other schools that got left behind.
Yeah, no, I think it kind of leads right into my next question perfectly. Essentially, what BE Collective Plus is doing is equalizing and leveling the playing field. My question back to that is, why do you feel there is such an uneven playing field for student athletes, especially from the HBCU sides, in terms of monetizing their name, image, and likeness here?
I think a lot of it truly is just exposure.
Yeah.
I think it's a matter of there's not people that know where to go to get the information, or don't know, the right people to get appropriate information. And so I think a large part of it is just simply exposure. I think from both sides of the coin. I think from the brand's perspective, if like, if you don't have someone within your organization or on your team working on this particular project that's thinking about what about HBCU student athletes when someone's bringing up NIL, which is already a brand new conversation in the first place. I think that's something that like they don't know where to go or where to start. And then from a student athlete perspective at an HBCU, in some cases, like you may see these posts and see all these things from different kids at different schools, but their schools may have someone dedicated to NIL within their athletic program that they can go to as a resource. And so like you just don't have the same access or exposure to knowing where to go to get these kind of deals. Because I do believe a lot of students could manage if they wanted themselves, because it is in fact their name, their image, and their likeness and their brand. And so, however they choose to control it is completely up to them. But I think there's a large gap in just not knowing where to go,
Mhm.
and you just need someone to kind of give you some form of direction.
Yeah, no, I think from a student athlete's perspective, right? Like being having to control their own brand. They have to go to class still. They have to go to practice still.
Yeah.
That's just a lot, right? For one student who's not even legally able to do a whole lot yet, realistically, in terms of rules. Um, so why do you think you're going to see more of a shift with colleges getting on board with programs such collectives such as yourself, so it makes it easier for athletes to access this program and get on board with sponsors from an easier platform?
Um, Let me make sure I understand. The question is like, why do I think that colleges will get on board with?
So questions mainly, do you think there's going to be a bigger shift, and specifically in HBCUs, as we saw with like Duke University hiring a specific person for an NIL program? You see some of these larger Big Five conferences hiring people specifically for these roles so that it's taking a burden off of their student athletes essentially. Now, from an HBCU's perspective, they may not have that resource yet. Do you see yourself as BE Collective Plus being able to fill that void for them?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. That is a large part of the mission, as to why BE Collective Plus was created. Was simply because like NIL isn't going anywhere, and it's inevitable that someone has to get some form of control over it. And so it's best to try to manage it in its infancy and while it's still small, before the gap just grows wider. And I think you see that within the trends of seeing like you see collectives born out of alumni basis for large schools.
Mhm.
You like mentioned, you see Duke University who hire people to come on board to their athletic department to assist student athletes. There are people that are doing things and putting systems in place to be able to navigate these waters, as they're uncharted. It's new territory for everyone involved, and so I think it's essential for programs and platforms like BE Collective, to bridge that gap for HBCUs, instead of someone, like I said, just kind of looking back over their shoulder and saying, "Oh, what about them?" As far as like, "Hey, you guys should have been doing this, this, and this in order to be where we are." Instead, I think you have to get in at the ground floor, at the ground level, to really just kind of explain the importance of it, and also share the narrative of, this is something that's not going anywhere, so it's better to have control over it on the front end than try to fix it on the back end.
Yeah, no, completely get it. Hot take really fast. When you're saying it's not going anywhere, I'm not sure if you're familiar with what the Stanford athletic director recently said, how Stanford's really not going to be focusing on NIL or using that as a recruiting tool. Do you foresee that being a mistake for Stanford athletic, and particularly with any other schools that kind of follow trend on not trying, outwardly saying we're not going to be using NIL as a tactic or a tool to recruit some better athletes for our school, which in turns means potentially less money for the athletic department?
So my thoughts are different strokes for different folks.
Yeah.
Um, I I don't necessarily think it's a mistake. I think it's a missed opportunity, to be
Yeah.
parent. However, every school doesn't view athletics the same. And so sometimes athletics isn't what gets students to your door, and isn't what attracts them. It's something that like helps while they're there. Whereas for other schools, athletics is what garners a lot of interest first, and brings people to you, and then they start learning more. So I think I definitely think it's a missed opportunity for them to not focus on it, but I also don't think it has to be the main focus either.
Yeah.
I If you focus too much on NIL, then you're really dancing the line and muddying the waters and getting into that recruitment space. So I definitely don't blame having a conservative approach to it, because you keep yourself protected at all times.
Yeah, no, completely agree for sure. I mean, I definitely have like thoughts and opinions. It was just a hot take because,
Yeah.
think about Stanford University. A lot of the people aren't going there specifically for athletics. That's like an added benefit, right? The
Yeah.
added benefit is their alumni association. Imagine being in the graduating class with like the Instagram founder and like knowing them personally on that level there. So I completely understand why that athletic director takes that route, because their alumni class and people coming in there from a Stanford's perspective is so much bigger than the broad scope of sports the 4 years that they're there. So yeah. But now let's circle back a little bit to you, Antoine, here. Has there been an MJ moment in your career where something someone said or did inadvertently, it doesn't have to be intentional, motivated you to do better and prove them wrong?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, I think I've got a chip on both shoulders right now, from my very early on in my career. I interviewed for an organization that will remain nameless. To, but I was interviewing for a sales role. They like brought me in for it was like a 2 day interview process. We got to go to a game afterwards. It was sweet. They had us like on the phones the next day making cold calls, like real live like interview practice, and then like a
Mm-hmm.
formal interview, all of that, right? And then they told me that they didn't think sales was for me. And I was like, wow, that's hurtful. And so, and I didn't like that because I don't like people telling me what I can't do. So,
Yeah.
and at the time, I was a group sales intern for another organization. So I'm like, what do you mean sales isn't for me? Like, I've been doing this for the last like 6 months.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I took that personal. And then later landed a job at another organization, which springboarded my career. Because fortunately, this was like when I was looking for my first job out of college.
Mm-hmm.
So it didn't hurt my pride too much because I hadn't landed anything yet. And so that one was like kind of just like the chip that I had for like starting my career and just always having that like hunger to
Mm-hmm.
like prove them. And then I had another one. where I had someone tell me that where I was in my career, I could be a big fish in a small pond or a small fish in a big pond as far as my next steps. Um, and I didn't like that. Because again, it was like the same thing as far as like I don't like people telling me what I can and can't do.
Yeah.
And so I like just like, nah, I'm pretty sure I could be a big fish in a big pond. Because I've been doing a lot of stuff so far. So
Yeah.
um yeah, I had those two experiences that I consider my MJ moments that I always think back and be like, and I took that personally.
Yeah, I love it there. And that's exactly where we came up with the question. There's always that moment in your career or what have you that like sticks with you and you're like, oh, I can remember that and that's just gonna drive me to do better. And even if it's not like we said, even if it's not meant to be harsh or personal, guess what? I took it that way and that's gonna be my motivation moving forward there. So yeah, love it.
Oh yeah.
um, but then finally, we're at the last question here. Our last question we call it the shit you wish you knew. So, which loosely translates to one piece of advice you wish you could tell your younger self or someone just starting out in the sports and entertainment industry.
Oh, patience is a virtue. Um, because it's worth it in the end, but man, is it hard. And I'm incredibly impatient as a person, which is why I would need to tell my younger self this because the sooner I learned that I was impatient, it might have been better. Um, but yeah, patience is a virtue because the sooner you can find peace there, then you can just let everything fall into place when it's supposed to.
Yeah, yeah. Find peace. That's like the golden statue right there, right? Finding peace. Because like I'm impatient too. So like, and I don't see anything wrong with being impatient for certain things, but there's an impatience where it can drive you mad, but there's an impatience where you can have that inner peace and still about you still. So yeah,
Yeah.
finding that inner peace in that patience part is always the tricky the tricky line there.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
but before we close everything out, I definitely want to make sure, give you a plug in how students and athletes and HBCUs can connect with you and be a part of BE Collective Plus.
Oh, absolutely. So you can find us online at becollectiveplus.com. The plus is spelled out. Um, and you can also find us on Instagram, on LinkedIn, at the HBCU Collective. So you can follow us there. Student athletes can reach out. Also, we are looking to partner with HBCUs directly in their athletic departments. And so we're looking to service them and service their entire student athlete base. And so, same for all of our other links with Instagram and LinkedIn. Professionals can connect with us there as well to establish partnerships with the collective.
Awesome, awesome. Well, thank you again, Antoine, for chatting with me today. Really appreciate you taking the time and walking us through this whole landscape here.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
No problem. And then I want to say thank you all for tuning in to another episode of the Connect Over Coffee here. If you want to see more content like this, please be sure to subscribe below or follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and of course, IG. Let's connect soon, guys.
Cool. Sounds good.